Henry Finch stepped out of the Mecklenburg County Courthouse with a smile that reached his eyes for the first time in months. The leather folder tucked beneath his arm contained everything he had fought to secure. The judge had approved the final settlement, the family home, the mountain cabin, most of the investment accounts, retirement savings, nearly every asset his attorney had argued belonged to him. Gavin Mercer walked beside him, adjusting his suit jacket with quiet satisfaction. "You did well," Gavin said. "Most clients don't leave with this much." Henry looked down at the folder before slipping it under his arm. "I told you I only wanted what was fair." Gavin gave a small nod. He had heard many versions of that sentence over the years. Fair often depended on who was speaking. Across the courthouse hallway, another signature marked the end of the same marriage. Lauren Wellman placed her pen on the table and slid the papers back toward Naomi Ellis. Naomi looked at her carefully. "Are you sure?" Lauren answered with the same calm voice she had carried through every meeting. "I've been sure for a while." "You don't want to challenge any of it?" Lauren glanced once at the documents listing the house, the cabin, the investment accounts, and every other possession that had filled months of negotiations. "No." Naomi understood there was a difference between giving up and choosing what mattered. She quietly gathered the paperwork. Henry never looked toward the conference room as he walked past it. His attention was already fixed on the future, waiting outside. Vanessa Doyle stood near the courthouse entrance, her smile bright enough to catch his attention immediately. "So?" she asked. Henry held up the folder. "It's finished." Relief spread across her face. "I told you everything would work out." She slipped her arm through his as they walked toward the front steps. "This is the first day of the rest of our lives." Henry believed her. Outside, the Carolina sunshine felt warmer than it had in weeks. For the first time since filing for divorce, there were no more hearings waiting on the calendar. No more negotiations. No more meetings with attorneys. He had what he wanted. His phone buzzed with a message from a coworker. "Congratulations. Drinks tonight?" Henry smiled and typed a quick reply. "Absolutely." He slipped the phone into his pocket and reached inside his jacket for the keys Gavin had just returned. The keys to the family home. His home now. As he stepped into the parking lot, movement across the sidewalk caught his eye. Lauren was standing beside her car. Jason stood next to her, wearing the same blue backpack he carried to school every day. Henry's face softened. He lifted a hand. "Hey, buddy." For years, Jason would have run straight toward him without thinking. This time, he didn't move. The little boy looked at his mother first. Lauren gave him a gentle smile. Jason slowly walked over. Henry bent slightly, expecting the usual hug. Instead, Jason offered a quiet smile. "Bye, Dad." The words were polite, respectful, careful. Henry waited another second. No hug came. "I'll see you this weekend," Henry said. "I know." Jason looked down before turning back toward Lauren. He climbed into her car, buckled his seatbelt, and rested his forehead against the window. Lauren met Henry's eyes for only a moment. There was no anger, no celebration, no bitterness. Only the tired expression of someone who had finally accepted that some chapters end long before the paperwork does. She closed the driver's door. The car pulled away. Henry watched it disappear around the corner before releasing a slow breath. Children adjust, he told himself. Jason's just having a hard day. Once everything settles down, things will feel normal again. He believed that with complete confidence. Standing in the courthouse parking lot, holding the keys to the house he had fought so hard to keep, Henry felt like the winner. He had no idea that the greatest loss from his divorce had never appeared on a single page the judge signed. Welcome to Will and Rye's stories. To every single person listening right now, thank you for being here. This channel is growing because of people like you who truly love emotional, unforgettable storytelling. Please support the channel by subscribing. 14 years before the divorce ended inside that courthouse, Lauren Wellman believed she had built the kind of home most families wanted. She and Henry Finch lived in a quiet neighborhood just outside Charlotte, North Carolina. The streets were lined with mature trees. Children rode bicycles until sunset. On weekends, neighbors gathered in backyards for cookouts while parents talked across fences. It wasn't a wealthy community filled with luxury estates. It was a place where people greeted each other by name and looked out for one another. Lauren loved that life. Every weekday began the same way. Her alarm rang before sunrise. She started the coffee, prepared breakfast, packed Jason's lunch, and checked his homework one last time before placing his backpack beside the front door. She never rushed those mornings. She believed children carried the feeling of home with them throughout the day. By the time 8-year-old Jason came downstairs, breakfast was waiting. "So," Lauren said with a smile, "are you ready for today's spelling test?" Jason grinned. "I practiced every word." "I know you did. You want me to spell one?" She laughed. "Go ahead." "Neighborhood." Lauren nodded with approval. "Perfect." Jason smiled proudly before taking another bite of breakfast. A few moments later, Henry walked into the kitchen adjusting the sleeves of an expensive suit. His phone was already in his hand. Lauren placed a cup of coffee beside him. "Morning." "Morning." Jason looked up. "Dad, Coach says if I keep practicing, I might play first base this season." Henry smiled while reading a message on his phone. "That's great, buddy. I've been practicing every afternoon." "I know." Lauren watched the conversation end before it truly began. Years earlier, Henry would have asked questions. Now he glanced at his watch instead. "I've got an early meeting." Lauren handed him his travel mug. "Drive safely." He kissed Lauren on the cheek, ruffled Jason's hair, and headed for the door. "Love you both." "We love you too," Lauren answered. Jason waved as Henry backed out of the driveway. The little boy kept watching until the car disappeared. Lauren noticed. "He works hard," she said gently. "I know." Jason picked up his backpack. "I just like when we eat together." Lauren rested a hand on his shoulder. "So do I." After dropping Jason at school, Lauren drove to her own office. She worked as a financial compliance manager, reviewing reports, budgets, and company records. Her job required patience, attention to detail, and the courage to question anything that didn't look right. She had earned a reputation for being fair. Co-workers trusted her because she never took shortcuts. When problems appeared, she solved them without creating unnecessary conflict. She carried that same attitude into every part of her life. After work, she picked Jason up from school exactly as she always did. "How was your day?" she asked. "I got every spelling word right." "I never doubted you." He climbed into the car smiling. "Can we practice baseball before dinner?" "Absolutely." When they reached home, Jason ran to the backyard carrying 2 gloves. Lauren followed him. For nearly an hour they played catch, laughed at wild throws, and celebrated every good catch as if it decided a championship. Jason looked toward the driveway once. Maybe Dad will get home early. Lauren looked at the empty street before throwing another pitch. Maybe. Inside a downtown office overlooking Charlotte, Henry finished another meeting. Executives congratulated him on securing a major client. One of them smiled. "Another year like this and you'll be moving into senior leadership." Henry couldn't hide his satisfaction. "That's the plan." The conversation quickly turned toward bonuses, investment opportunities, and executive benefits. Henry listened closely. Not long ago, he would have been eager to get home. Now he stayed another hour discussing future promotions. By the time he reached the neighborhood, the sun had already started to set. Jason was sitting on the front steps beside Lauren. The baseball gloves rested between them. Henry stepped out of the car. "Sorry I'm late." Jason stood immediately. "It's okay." Lauren smiled warmly. "Dinner's ready." Inside the house, they gathered around the dining table. Jason spent most of dinner talking about school and baseball. Lauren listened with genuine interest. Henry answered when spoken to, but his phone buzzed several times beside his plate. Each vibration pulled his attention away from the conversation. Lauren noticed. She didn't complain. Dinner ended peacefully. After Jason went upstairs to shower, Lauren carried the dishes into the kitchen. Henry followed. "Busy day?" she asked. "Very. You look tired." "I am." She handed him a glass of water. "I'm proud of everything you've accomplished." Henry smiled. "I'm finally getting where I've always wanted to be." Lauren nodded. "I just hope we enjoy getting there together." Henry kissed her forehead. "We will." He believed those words. Lauren wanted to believe them too. Neither of them realized they were beginning to define success in different ways. Henry measured it by every promotion waiting ahead. Lauren measured it by the family sitting around the dinner table each evening. At that moment, neither definition seemed wrong. Neither of them understood that those different priorities would slowly pull their marriage in opposite directions, until one ordinary choice after another carried them toward the courthouse, where Henry would one day walk away believing he had won everything. The months passed, and Henry's career continued climbing. Each promotion came with a larger paycheck, greater responsibility, and more time away from home. Lauren celebrated every achievement. She never complained about the long hours. She believed hard work deserved support. She only hoped success would not replace the family Henry had worked so hard to build. One Saturday morning, Jason walked into the kitchen carrying his baseball glove. "Dad, are we practicing today?" Henry looked up from his laptop. "I've got a client meeting." Jason's smile faded. "You said we'd go this weekend." "I know. It won't take long." Henry closed the laptop halfway. "I'll make it up to you tomorrow." Jason nodded. "Okay." He walked outside without another word. Lauren watched him through the window. She picked up her own glove. "I think your teammate is waiting." Jason looked up. "You'll practice with me?" "Of course." For the next hour, they threw baseballs across the backyard. Lauren missed plenty of catches. Jason laughed every time she chased the ball into the grass. By the time they finished, both of them were smiling. When Henry finally returned that evening, he carried 2 large shopping bags. "I know I missed practice." He placed a brand new baseball bat beside Jason. "And I got you something." Jason's eyes widened. "Wow." He held the bat for a few seconds before setting it against the wall. "Thank you, Dad." Henry expected Jason to ask to use it immediately. Instead, Jason quietly returned to finishing his homework. Henry looked at Lauren. "I thought he'd be excited." "He is. Then why doesn't he look happy?" Lauren answered honestly. "He wanted your time more than another bat." Henry frowned. "I bought the best one in the store." "I know." Henry sighed. "I can't be everywhere." Lauren nodded. "I'm not asking you to be everywhere." She looked toward Jason. "I'm asking you to be somewhere." Henry didn't answer. He believed Lauren didn't understand the pressure he carried at work. Lauren believed Henry no longer understood what Jason needed at home. A week later, Jason brought home a flyer from school. "Dad," Henry looked away from another email. "What is it?" "Our school's family heritage night is next Thursday." Henry reached for his calendar. "I'll check. It starts at 6. Henry studied his schedule. "I've got a leadership dinner." Jason forced a smile. "Okay." Lauren waited until Jason went upstairs. "He really wants you there." Henry leaned back in his chair. "I'm doing all this for him." "I know. Then why does it always feel like I'm disappointing everyone?" Lauren sat across from him. "Because Jason isn't asking for more things." She spoke gently. "He's asking for memories." Henry rubbed his forehead. "I don't know how to make everyone happy." "I'm not asking you to." She held his eyes. "I'm asking you not to miss moments you can't get back." Henry looked away. The conversation ended there. Neither of them raised their voices. Neither of them solved anything. The following Thursday, Lauren sat beside Jason during Family Heritage Night. Jason proudly showed classmates old family photographs and stories his mother had helped him collect. Every few minutes, he looked toward the entrance. Every time the doors opened, hope appeared on his face. Every time someone else walked in, that hope disappeared. The event ended without Henry arriving. Lauren never criticized him in front of Jason. She simply clapped the loudest after Jason finished speaking. On the drive home, Jason stared through the passenger window. "Mom?" "Yes?" "Do you think Dad wanted to come?" Lauren answered without hesitation. "I think he did." "Then why wasn't he there?" She gripped the steering wheel. Sometimes adults make choices they don't realize they'll regret. Jason quietly nodded. "I liked that you came." Lauren smiled. "I'll always come." The next evening, Henry arrived carrying a designer purse for Lauren and a new gaming system for Jason. "I know I missed yesterday." Jason thanked him politely. Lauren accepted the gift with a smile. After Jason went upstairs, she placed the unopened purse on the dining table. Henry noticed. "You don't like it?" "It's beautiful." "Then what's wrong?" Lauren met his eyes. "I don't need another purse." "What do you need?" She answered without hesitation. "My husband." Henry looked frustrated. "I've worked for everything we have. And I'm grateful." She stepped closer. "But this family doesn't measure love by what comes through the front door in shopping bags." Henry shook his head. "You make it sound like I'm failing." Lauren spoke calmly. "No. I think you're forgetting what Jason will remember when he's older." Henry grabbed his car keys. "I need some air." The front door closed behind him. Lauren remained in the kitchen for several moments before turning off the lights. Upstairs, Jason was already asleep. His new gaming system remained unopened beside his bed. Lauren looked at the box before pulling the blanket over her son's shoulders. She realized something Henry still couldn't see. Every missed afternoon, every missed game, every promise replaced by another expensive gift. None of those moments seemed important by themselves. Together, they were quietly changing the relationship between a father and his son. Henry still believed there would always be another chance. Lauren had begun to understand that childhood never waits for anyone. Winter gave way to spring, but nothing changed inside the Finch home. Henry spent more nights traveling than sleeping in his own bed. When he was home, his phone rarely left his hand. Lauren stopped asking when he would be back. She had learned that every answer sounded the same. Work ran late. The meeting took longer than expected. "I'll make it up this weekend." Weekend after weekend passed. The promises stayed the same. One Friday afternoon, Jason rushed through the front door holding a ribbon. "Mom!" Lauren looked up from the kitchen. "What happened?" "I came in second at the science fair." She hugged him. "I'm so proud of you." Jason smiled. "Dad's coming home tonight. I can't wait to show him." Lauren smiled too. "I know he'll want to see it." That evening, Jason placed his project beside the front door. Every few minutes, he looked through the window. Headlights finally turned into the driveway. Henry stepped inside carrying his briefcase. "Sorry I'm late." Jason picked up the ribbon. "Dad, look!" Henry smiled. "That's great, buddy. I made the volcano myself." "I knew you could." Jason waited. "You want to see it?" Henry looked at his phone. "I've got one quick call. I'll be right back." Jason nodded. "Okay." He carried the project into the dining room and waited. 10 minutes passed. 20. Henry was still talking. Lauren walked into the room. Jason sat quietly beside the display board. "He forgot." Lauren sat beside him. "No." She gently touched his shoulder. "He made a bad choice." Jason looked down. "That's different." "It is." He didn't ask another question. Later that night, Henry found the project sitting on the dining table. "I'm sorry." Jason smiled politely. "It's okay." Henry looked relieved. Lauren wasn't. She knew children often forgave long before they stopped feeling hurt. A week later, Lauren received a phone call during lunch. The screen showed a name she didn't expect. Cynthia Finch. Lauren answered immediately. "Hi, Cynthia. Can we meet today?" "Of course." An hour later, they sat inside a quiet cafe. Cynthia wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. She struggled to begin. Lauren noticed. "You don't have to worry about hurting me." Cynthia lowered her eyes. "I'm worried because the truth will." Lauren stayed silent. "I've seen Henry with another woman." Lauren looked at her for several seconds. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse anyone. She simply asked, "Are you certain?" Cynthia nodded. "I wish I wasn't." "How long?" "I don't know exactly." Lauren took a slow breath. "Does anyone else know?" "I don't think so." Cynthia reached across the table. "I'm sorry." Lauren managed a small smile. "This isn't your fault." "No." Cynthia shook her head. "But I should have told you sooner." "You told me now." Neither woman spoke about it again. There was nothing left to say. Lauren drove home thinking about every missed dinner, every business trip, every promise. For the first time, the pieces finally fit together. That evening she prepared dinner, exactly as she always did. Jason talked about baseball practice. Lauren listened. Henry acted as though everything was normal. After Jason went upstairs to finish his homework, Lauren cleared the table. "We need to talk." Henry looked at her. "Now?" "Yes." They sat across from each other in the dining room. Lauren looked directly at him. "Are you seeing someone else?" Henry didn't answer. His silence gave her the truth before his words did. Finally, he nodded. "Yes." Lauren closed her eyes for only a moment. "When did it start?" "A few months ago." "You've been lying to Jason and me for months." Henry looked down. "I never wanted to hurt either of you." "But you did." "I wasn't happy." Lauren answered calmly. "You never told me that." "I didn't know how." "You found a way to tell someone else." Henry leaned back. "I don't want this to become a fight." "It won't." She spoke without anger. "I only want honesty." Henry rubbed his forehead. "We've become different people." Lauren nodded. "That's true. But different isn't what ended this marriage." Henry remained silent. She continued. "You chose someone else before you chose to speak honestly with me." He had no answer. After several moments, he reached into his briefcase and removed a folder. Lauren looked at it. "What is that?" "I've already hired a divorce attorney." Lauren stared at the papers. "You already hired one?" "I wanted to be prepared." She looked at the man across the table. While she had been planning family dinners, he had been planning to leave. While she had been trying to hold the marriage together, he had already decided it was over. Henry pushed the folder toward her. "My attorney will contact you." Lauren didn't touch it. She slowly stood. "I won't stop you from leaving." Henry looked surprised. "I thought you'd argue." She shook her head. "No." She looked him in the eyes. "I won't waste my energy trying to convince someone to stay when they've already walked away." She turned toward the staircase. Henry called after her. "Lauren." She stopped. "For whatever it's worth, I'm sorry." Lauren answered without looking back. "One day you'll understand what you're really giving up." She walked upstairs. Jason was already asleep. She sat beside his bed and gently brushed the hair away from his forehead. Looking at her son, Lauren made the most important decision of her life. She was no longer trying to save her marriage. From that night forward, she would do everything possible to protect Jason's childhood, no matter what the coming divorce would take from her. The morning after Henry admitted the affair, the Finch house no longer felt like a family home. Nothing had moved. The furniture was in the same place. Jason's backpack still rested beside the front door. Lauren still prepared breakfast before sunrise. She refused to let Jason feel the weight of problems he was too young to carry. "Good morning," she said with a smile. Jason sat at the table. "Is Dad already gone?" "He left early." Jason nodded and finished his breakfast. Lauren drove him to school as she always did. She smiled until the school bus disappeared from sight. Only then did she allow herself to think about what came next. She didn't think about the house. She didn't think about the money. She thought about Jason. She made herself one promise. No matter how painful the divorce became, Jason would never feel forced to choose between his parents. That promise guided every decision she made from that day forward. Later that afternoon, Lauren walked into Naomi Ellis's office. Naomi stood and greeted her warmly. "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances." "So am I." They sat across from each other. Lauren explained everything. The affair, Henry's decision, the divorce attorney. Naomi listened without interrupting. When Lauren finished, Naomi opened a legal pad. "What matters most to you?" Lauren answered immediately. "My son." Naomi nodded. "I expected that answer. I don't want Jason growing up in the middle of constant court battles. You understand that Henry may fight for almost everything." "I know. And if that happens?" Lauren looked directly at her. "I'll protect Jason before I protect property." Naomi smiled. "That's a strong place to begin." She pulled several folders from a cabinet. "We'll gather every financial record, every account statement, every mortgage document, and every retirement record." Lauren nodded. "I'll bring everything." Naomi leaned forward. "I also want you prepared." "For what?" If Henry's attorney has a reputation for aggressive negotiations, this may become difficult. Lauren remained calm. I'm not looking for revenge. Good. Naomi closed the folder. Revenge usually costs more than it's worth. Lauren stood to leave. Thank you. We'll take one step at a time. Lauren left the office feeling lighter. Her problems hadn't disappeared. She simply knew she didn't have to face them alone. Across Charlotte, Henry sat inside Gavin Mercer's office. Large financial statements covered the conference table. Gavin studied every page carefully. You earn considerably more than Lauren. I do. You paid most of the mortgage. Yes. You've built substantial investment accounts. Henry nodded again. Gavin folded his hands. Then we begin from a position of strength. Henry shifted in his chair. I don't want this divorce to become ugly. Gavin answered without hesitation. Divorce isn't about feelings. He tapped the financial reports. It's about results. Henry looked down at the papers. I only want what's fair. Gavin picked up a pen. Let's define fair. He pointed to the first document. The family home. I want it. The mountain cabin. I want that too. The investment accounts. I'd like to keep them. The retirement funds. Henry hesitated for only a second. Yes. Gavin wrote another note. We'll pursue every asset the law allows. Henry looked uncertain. Is all of this necessary? Gavin met his eyes. You don't start negotiations by giving things away. Henry slowly nodded. The conversation sounded familiar. It felt exactly like discussing a business acquisition. Every decision focused on numbers. Every strategy focused on winning. Not once did they discuss Jason. That evening, Henry met Vanessa for dinner. She smiled as soon as he sat down. How did it go? I hired Gavin. I've heard he's the best. He says we have a strong case. Vanessa reached across the table. Good. Henry ordered coffee instead of dinner. I just want this over. It will be. She smiled confidently. When everything is finished, we'll finally start our new life. Henry nodded. He wanted to believe that. Across town, Lauren sat beside Jason at the kitchen table. Jason worked on his spelling words. Lauren checked each answer. You've improved. Jason smiled. I've been practicing. I can tell. He looked up. Mom? Yes? Are you and Dad getting divorced? Lauren knew the question would come. She answered gently. Yes. Jason looked down at his notebook. Will I still see him? Of course. You promise? I promise. Jason nodded. I love both of you. Lauren reached across the table and held his hand. You never have to choose between us. Jason smiled. That was all he needed to hear. After he went to bed, Lauren walked through the quiet house. She looked at the family photographs hanging on the walls. She remembered birthdays, Christmas mornings, summer cookouts, baseball practice in the backyard. Every room held memories. She smiled softly. A house could hold memories. It could never replace the people who created them. At the same time, Henry sat in his apartment reviewing financial reports Gavin had prepared. He believed careful planning would secure the future he wanted. Lauren believed protecting Jason would secure the future that mattered most. Without realizing it, both of them had already chosen very different definitions of victory. Those choices would shape everything that followed. The divorce moved from private conversations to legal negotiations. Every week brought another meeting. Every meeting ended with another stack of documents. Lauren and Henry now sat across conference tables instead of across the dinner table, where they had shared meals for years. Naomi sat beside Lauren. Gavin sat beside Henry. The first settlement meeting began without emotion. Gavin opened a folder. My client is requesting sole ownership of the marital residence. Naomi wrote a note. Gavin continued. The mountain cabin. Another note. The majority of the investment accounts. Naomi remained calm. The retirement funds. She finally looked up. Those are extensive requests. Gavin nodded. My client contributed the larger income. Naomi replied calmly. Income is only one part of the law. Henry remained focused on the documents in front of him. Lauren remained focused on the future, waiting for Jason. The meeting continued for hours. Property values were discussed. Mortgage balances were reviewed. Investment statements were compared. Every possession received a dollar amount. Lauren listened quietly. She noticed something. Every conversation centered on what they owned. No one had mentioned Jason. When the meeting ended, Naomi gathered the files. "You don't have to answer today." Lauren nodded. "I know." Outside the building, Naomi walked beside her. "What are you thinking?" Lauren looked toward the parking lot. "I could fight every request." "You could, but what would Jason live through while we did that?" Naomi answered honestly. "Months." She paused only long enough to choose the right words. "Possibly years." Lauren lowered her eyes. "I won't give him years of courtrooms." Naomi studied her. "You understand what that choice may cost you." "I do." Lauren smiled faintly. "I've spent years teaching families that money can be replaced." She looked back at the courthouse. "A peaceful childhood can't." Naomi nodded with respect. "Then we'll choose the battles that truly matter." Across town, Henry met Gavin again. Gavin spread new financial reports across the table. "Lauren's attorney hasn't accepted our proposal." Henry frowned. "I expected that." "We'll increase the pressure." Henry looked at him. "What do you mean?" "We negotiate firmly." Gavin pointed to another document. "If we hold our position, she'll eventually compromise." Henry slowly nodded. He trusted Gavin's experience. Every meeting strengthened his belief that this was simply another negotiation. He measured progress by assets. He measured success by percentages. That evening, Henry met Vanessa. She smiled as he sat down. "Any news?" "We're getting closer." "That's good." Henry stirred his coffee. "I just want everything finished." Vanessa smiled. "When it's over, you'll finally have the life you've worked for." Henry believed that. He pictured the house, the cabin, the investments, everything he had spent years building. He never questioned whether those things alone could make a home. Across town, Lauren and Jason ate dinner together. Jason looked across the table. "When is Dad coming?" "He has dinner with you on Saturday." Jason smiled. "Can we play baseball after?" "I hope so." Jason nodded. "I'll bring my glove." Lauren smiled, but she knew something had changed. Jason no longer expected his father to be there. He hoped. There was a difference. Several weeks passed. The negotiations continued. Each new proposal looked much like the last. Henry wanted the house, the cabin, the larger investment accounts, the retirement savings. Lauren reviewed every document with Naomi. One afternoon, Naomi closed the file. "I need to ask you something." Lauren looked up. "If we take this to trial, we may recover more." "I understand. But it will become longer." Lauren didn't hesitate. "No." Naomi waited. "My answer is still the same. I'm protecting Jason." Naomi smiled. "I've represented many parents." She closed the folder. Some spend years trying to win against each other. Lauren looked through the office window. "I don't want Jason remembering his childhood as a series of court dates." Naomi nodded. "I think that's the wisest decision you've made." When Lauren returned home that evening, Jason was sitting on the living room floor drawing with colored pencils. He looked up. "Mom." "Yes?" "I made something." He held up the paper. There were 2 houses. Lauren smiled. "Tell me about them." Jason pointed to the first one. "That's your house." He pointed to the second. "That's Dad's." Lauren noticed something missing. "Where are you?" Jason looked at the drawing. "I forgot." Lauren picked up a blue pencil. She drew a small path connecting both houses. Then she handed the pencil back. "You don't belong to a house." Jason looked at her. "You belong with the people who love you." Jason smiled. He carefully drew himself standing on the path between both homes. Lauren looked at the picture and quietly thanked herself for every decision she had made. The court could measure houses. It could measure savings. It could measure investments. It could never measure the security a child felt when both parents chose to put him first. That truth guided Lauren through every negotiation, even as Henry became more convinced that winning meant leaving the marriage with the largest share of everything written on paper. 6 months after Henry filed for divorce, the final hearing arrived. Lauren entered the courthouse with Naomi Ellis beside her. Henry walked in with Gavin Mercer. Neither spoke. There was nothing left to argue. The judge reviewed the settlement one final time. Every page had already been negotiated. Every signature had already been prepared. The hearing was brief. When it ended, the judge approved the agreement. The marriage was officially over. Henry had received nearly everything he had requested: the family home, the mountain cabin, most of the investment accounts, the larger retirement funds, several other financial assets. Gavin gathered the documents and smiled. "Congratulations." Henry looked at the papers. "It's finally over. You achieved an excellent result." Henry nodded. "Thank you." Across the hallway, Naomi handed Lauren the final paperwork. "It's finished." Lauren signed the last page without hesitation. Naomi looked at her. "How are you holding up?" Lauren closed the folder. "I'll be all right." "You gave up a great deal." Lauren gently shook her head. "I gave up property." She looked toward the courthouse entrance. "I didn't give up what matters most." Naomi understood exactly what she meant. Outside the courtroom, Henry met Vanessa near the front steps. She smiled the moment she saw him. "So?" Henry held up the folder. "We're done." Vanessa hugged him. "I knew everything would work out." Henry smiled. So did Gavin. She slipped her arm through his. "You finally have your future." Henry believed every word. His phone vibrated. A message from Curtis appeared. "Congratulations. Drinks tonight?" Henry smiled and replied, "I'll be there." He slipped the phone into his pocket and walked toward the parking lot. Gavin handed him another envelope. "These belong to you." Henry opened it. Inside were the keys to the family home. He looked at them for a moment before closing his hand. Everything he had fought for now belonged to him. As he reached the sidewalk, he noticed Lauren standing beside her car. Jason stood next to her carrying his blue backpack. Henry smiled. "Hey, buddy." Jason looked up. For a second, Henry expected him to run over like he always had. Jason stayed where he was. Lauren gave him an encouraging smile. Jason slowly walked toward his father. Henry bent slightly. "Come here." Jason stopped in front of him. "Bye, Dad." Henry waited for the hug. It never came. "I'll pick you up this weekend." "I know. You still want to play baseball?" Jason smiled politely. "Okay." Henry reached out and gently touched his son's shoulder. "I'll see you soon." Jason nodded. "See you." He turned around and walked back to Lauren's car. Lauren opened the passenger door. Jason climbed inside, fastened his seatbelt, and looked out the window. Lauren met Henry's eyes. She didn't smile. She didn't look angry. She simply nodded once before getting behind the wheel. The car pulled away. Henry watched until it disappeared from sight. He stood there for another moment. Jason must still be adjusting. That's all this is. Children bounce back. Everything will settle down. He truly believed it. He looked at the keys in his hand. The house was his. The cabin was his. The investments were his. The retirement accounts were his. By every legal measure, he had won. That afternoon, Henry unlocked the front door of the family home. The house was exactly as he remembered. The furniture remained in place. The walls still displayed family photographs. Jason's height marks were still visible on the kitchen doorway. Henry smiled as he walked through each room. He stood in the living room. No laughter filled the house. He walked into the kitchen. No one was preparing dinner. He climbed the stairs. Every bedroom was quiet. The silence felt different now. For years he had dreamed of keeping this house. Now it belonged entirely to him. He walked into the master bedroom and placed the courthouse folder on the dresser. Then he looked around. For the first time, the rooms felt much larger than he remembered. He told himself it was only because everyone had moved out. Soon, Vanessa would be there. Soon, life would feel normal again. Soon, the house would feel full. He believed the hardest part of his life was finally behind him. He locked the front door completely convinced he had secured the future he wanted. He still could not see that the greatest loss from his divorce had never been listed in the settlement papers. It had quietly climbed into Lauren's car that afternoon and driven away beside her. A week after the divorce became final, Lauren and Jason settled into a small rental house across town. It wasn't as large as the home they had left behind. There was no spacious backyard, no mountain view, no extra rooms. Lauren looked around and smiled. "We're going to be happy here." Jason carried a small box into his bedroom. "I like my window." Lauren laughed. "Me too." Together, they unpacked books, family photographs, baseball trophies, and Jason's favorite blanket. Lauren hung the same family calendar on the kitchen wall. She placed Jason's lunchbox in the same cabinet she had always used. She wanted one thing to remain unchanged. Home should still feel like home. The next morning, she woke before sunrise. Breakfast was ready before Jason came downstairs. He smiled. "It smells the same." Lauren looked at him. "I promised some things would never change." Jason sat at the table. "I'm glad." After school, they stopped at a grocery store. Jason pushed the cart. "Can I pick the cereal?" "You've earned that job." He laughed and carefully compared 2 boxes before making his choice. When they reached the checkout, Lauren looked at the total. She knew money would be tighter now. Still, she never regretted the decisions she had made. Peace was worth more than a larger house. That evening, they ate dinner together. Afterward, they played catch in a nearby park. There were no expensive gifts, no luxury surroundings, only a mother and her son, enjoying another ordinary evening. Jason smiled more than he had in months. Across Charlotte, Henry unlocked the front door of the family home. This time Vanessa walked in beside him, carrying several shopping bags. She looked around. "We have so much space." Henry smiled. "We do." Vanessa walked through every room. "We should repaint the living room." Henry nodded. "Sure. The dining room needs new furniture, if that's what you want." She continued upstairs. "The guest room could become my office." Henry followed quietly. Every room reminded him of the life that had once filled the house. Jason learning to ride a bicycle in the driveway, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, Lauren cooking dinner while Jason finished homework at the kitchen table. Vanessa opened another door. "This room feels empty." Henry looked inside. It was Jason's bedroom. Most of Jason's belongings were gone. Only a few shelves and pieces of furniture remained. Vanessa smiled. "We can redesign this." Henry answered quickly. "No." She looked surprised. "Why not?" "Jason still stays here." "Only every other weekend." Henry looked around the room. "I want it to stay his." Vanessa nodded. "All right." Saturday arrived. Henry waited at the front window long before Lauren's car appeared. He wanted everything to be perfect. He had bought Jason a new bicycle. He had filled the kitchen with Jason's favorite snacks. He believed this weekend would help everything feel normal again. Lauren pulled into the driveway. Jason climbed out carrying a small overnight bag. Henry opened the front door with a smile. "Hey, buddy." Jason smiled politely. "Hi, Dad." Henry pointed toward the garage. "I have a surprise." Jason followed him. The new bicycle stood near the wall with a large red bow across the handlebars. Henry smiled. "What do you think?" Jason looked at it. "It's nice." "You want to ride it?" Jason nodded. "Maybe later." Henry expected excitement. Instead, Jason walked back inside carrying his overnight bag. Henry quietly followed. Jason stopped in the hallway. "Can I put my things in my room?" "Of course." He walked upstairs. Henry watched him disappear. Something felt different. The house no longer belonged naturally to Jason. It felt like a place he visited. That evening, Henry ordered dinner from Jason's favorite restaurant. They ate together. The conversation was polite. Jason answered every question. He smiled. He thanked his father for dinner. Still, the easy conversations they once shared never returned. After dinner, Henry looked toward the backyard. "Want to play catch?" Jason looked outside. "We played yesterday." Henry smiled. "We can play again." Jason hesitated. "I'm kind of tired." Okay. He wasn't upset. He simply walked upstairs. Henry remained standing in the kitchen. The large house suddenly felt much quieter than it ever had before. Later that night, Vanessa noticed Henry sitting alone in the living room. What are you thinking about? Henry looked toward the staircase. I thought Jason would be happier here. He probably just needs time. Henry nodded. I hope so. Upstairs, Jason unpacked his overnight bag. He placed one family photograph on the bedside table. It showed him standing between both parents several years earlier. He looked at it for a few seconds before turning off the lamp. Across town, Lauren finished washing the dinner dishes in her small rental home. The house was quiet. She missed Jason. She also knew he needed both parents. She hoped Henry would use every weekend wisely. Neither Lauren nor Henry realized the biggest difference between their homes had nothing to do with size. One house was still becoming a home. The other was slowly becoming a place filled with memories that could never return. Henry refused to believe he had lost Jason. He told himself their relationship only needed time. The next weekend, he picked Jason up with a smile. I planned something special. Jason fastened his seatbelt. What are we doing? We're spending the day at an amusement park. Jason smiled politely. Sounds fun. Henry paid for every ride, every game, and every snack Jason wanted. He bought a large stuffed animal after Jason won a game. You earned it, Henry said. Jason thanked him. He was respectful all day. But Henry noticed something. Jason laughed more with other children than he did with him. On the drive home, Henry tried to start a conversation. Did you have fun? I did. What was your favorite ride? The roller coaster. Henry smiled. We should come back next month. Jason looked out the window. Maybe? The answer stayed with Henry. Months earlier, Jason would have shouted yes without thinking. Now every answer sounded careful. A few days later, Henry stopped by an electronics store. He bought the newest game console and several games. When Jason arrived the following weekend, Henry carried the boxes into the living room. I remembered you wanted these. Jason looked surprised. You didn't have to. I wanted to. Jason hugged him briefly. Thank you. Henry smiled. Let's set everything up. They spent an hour connecting the system. When it was ready, Henry handed Jason the controller. You first. Jason played for a while. After an hour, he turned it off. I'm done. Henry looked surprised. I thought you'd play longer. Jason shrugged. I don't really play that much anymore. What do you usually do? I help Mom cook dinner. Henry blinked. You cook? Jason smiled. I mostly stir things. Henry laughed. I didn't know that. We make dinner together almost every night. Henry nodded slowly. There was another part of Jason's life he knew nothing about. The following Saturday, Henry planned another outing. I reserved seats for the baseball game. Jason smiled. That's nice. You love baseball. I do. They watched the game together. Henry bought hot dogs, drinks, and souvenirs. The afternoon went well. On the drive home, Henry smiled. This felt like old times. Jason looked at him. It was fun. Henry waited. Jason didn't say anything else. When they reached the house, Jason picked up his overnight bag. Lauren's car pulled into the driveway. She stepped out with a smile. Hi. Henry nodded. Hi. Jason walked straight toward his mother. Before getting into the car, he turned back. Thanks for today, Dad. You're welcome, buddy. Jason smiled. See you next weekend. Lauren drove away. Henry stood in the driveway watching the car disappear. Inside the house, Vanessa looked at him. Everything okay? Henry nodded. I think so. You don't sound sure. Henry sat on the couch. I keep planning these big weekends. And? He enjoys them. That's good. Henry looked around the quiet room. But he doesn't stay excited after they're over. Vanessa folded her arms. He's still adjusting. Henry wanted to believe that. The next week, Jason called him one evening. Henry answered immediately. Hey, buddy. Hi, Dad. What are you doing? I'm helping Mom plant flowers. Henry smiled. You've become a gardener? Jason laughed. Not really. What kind of flowers? I don't know their names. Henry laughed too. You'll have to show me. I will. They talked for another minute before Jason said goodbye. Henry lowered the phone. The conversation had been short. Still, something bothered him. Jason hadn't called to ask for anything. He hadn't mentioned presents. He hadn't talked about the game console. He simply wanted to tell his father about planting flowers with Lauren. That night, Henry walked into Jason's bedroom. The bicycle still stood in the garage. The game console sat untouched downstairs. The expensive gifts filled the house. The one thing Jason seemed happiest talking about was making dinner and planting flowers with his mother. Henry finally began seeing what Lauren had tried to tell him years earlier. Children remember ordinary moments. Those simple routines become the memories they carry for life. He had spent years believing bigger gifts would make up for missed time. Now he understood they never had. The distance between him and Jason hadn't appeared after the divorce. It had grown little by little during all the evenings he chose work over home. For the first time, Henry stopped asking himself what more he could buy. He started asking a much harder question. Had he waited too long to become the father Jason needed? The months after the divorce were nothing like Henry expected. He thought life would become easier. Instead, every week brought a new disappointment. Vanessa moved into the house, but the excitement faded quickly. One evening, she stood in the kitchen looking at a list of monthly expenses. She frowned. I didn't realize this house cost so much to maintain. Henry looked up from his laptop. It has always been expensive. We're paying the mortgage, property taxes, insurance, landscaping, and repairs. Henry nodded. I know. Vanessa looked around the large kitchen. I thought we'd have more freedom after the divorce. Henry closed the laptop. So did I. A few days later, the air conditioning stopped working. Henry called for repairs. The bill was much higher than he expected. Vanessa looked at the invoice. Another expense. Henry paid it without saying much. The house he had fought to keep demanded constant attention. The peace he expected never arrived. The following weekend, Jason came for his scheduled visit. Henry greeted him at the door. Good to see you, buddy. You too, Dad. Vanessa smiled. Hi, Jason. Hi. Everyone tried to make the visit comfortable. Dinner was pleasant. The conversation stayed polite. Still, Jason spent most of the evening in his room reading a book. Vanessa watched him walk upstairs. I thought he'd spend more time with us. Henry answered quietly. He's still getting used to everything. The next morning, Henry knocked on Jason's bedroom door. You want breakfast? Jason looked up from his book. Sure. They ate together. Henry tried to keep the conversation going. How's school? Good. Baseball? We're doing well. Any new friends? Jason smiled. A few. The conversation ended almost as quickly as it began. Henry realized he no longer knew what questions to ask. He had missed too many ordinary days. On Monday morning, Henry returned to work. Another promotion was announced. Coworkers gathered around his office. Curtis shook his hand. Congratulations. Thanks. You've worked hard for this. Henry smiled. I have. Everyone congratulated him. His salary increased again. His office became larger. His title carried more influence. For years, moments like this filled him with excitement. This time, the feeling disappeared before lunch. That evening, he drove home. The large house was quiet. Vanessa was still at work. Jason was with Lauren. Henry unlocked the front door and stood in the empty living room. His promotion suddenly felt much smaller than it had that morning. A few weeks later, Vanessa placed several decorating magazines on the coffee table. I've been thinking. Henry looked over. About what? We should renovate. The house is fine. I want something different. She pointed toward the kitchen. New cabinets. Then the living room. New furniture. Finally, the backyard. A complete makeover. Henry sighed. We've already spent a lot. Vanessa folded her arms. I thought this was supposed to be our fresh start. It is. It doesn't feel like one. Henry didn't answer. He looked around the room. Nothing inside the house made either of them happy. Another month passed. Arguments became more frequent. Not loud, not dramatic, just constant disagreements over money, schedules, and expectations. One evening, Vanessa looked at Henry across the dinner table. "You're different." "How?" "You don't smile anymore." Henry looked down at his plate. "I've been busy." "No." She shook her head. "You were busy before." He remained quiet. Vanessa continued, "You finally got everything you wanted." Henry looked around the room. For the first time, he wasn't sure that was true. The following Saturday, he watched Jason leave after another weekend visit. Lauren's car disappeared down the street. Henry remained standing in the driveway. Vanessa walked outside. "You've been doing that a lot." "What?" "Watching them leave." Henry slowly nodded. "The house feels empty every time." Vanessa looked at him. "They'll be back." Henry answered honestly, "It isn't the same." That evening, he walked through every room alone. The walls still held family photographs he had never taken down. He stopped in front of one picture. Lauren stood between him and Jason on a beach vacation years earlier. All three of them were smiling. Henry stared at the photograph for a long time. He remembered that day clearly. No meetings, no business trips, no phone calls. Just time together. He finally understood why that memory stayed with him. It wasn't because of where they had gone. It was because they had been together. Henry looked around the house one more time. He had the home. He had the cabin. He had the investments. He had the promotion. Yet every evening the house felt quieter. Every success felt smaller. Every achievement ended with him coming home to a life that never became what he imagined. For the first time since the divorce, Henry asked himself a question he had spent months avoiding. If winning had brought him here, had he really won at all? Another year passed. Jason was growing quickly. He was taller, more confident, and doing well in school. Lauren noticed every change because she was there every day. She helped with homework. She packed lunches every morning. She attended every parent meeting. She cheered at every baseball game. Those ordinary moments slowly became the foundation of Jason's childhood. Henry saw only part of that life. He had his scheduled weekends, phone calls during the week, a few holidays. It never felt like enough. One Saturday morning, Henry arrived at the baseball field before Jason's game. He wanted to surprise him. Jason spotted him from the dugout. "Hi, Dad." Henry smiled. "I made it." Jason smiled back. "I'm glad." Coach Marcus gathered the players. Jason ran onto the field. The game began. Henry watched proudly. Jason made 2 strong catches and drove in the winning run. Parents stood and applauded. Lauren smiled from the bleachers. Henry clapped just as loudly. After the game ended, Jason ran toward Coach Marcus first. The coach congratulated him. Next, Jason walked straight to Lauren. "Did you see that last hit?" Lauren laughed. "I don't think anyone could have missed it." Jason hugged her. Only then did he turn toward Henry. "Thanks for coming, Dad." Henry smiled. "You played great." Jason nodded. "I've been practicing." Henry wanted to say they should practice together. The words stayed inside. He already knew who had been throwing baseballs with Jason. On the drive home, Henry couldn't stop thinking about that moment. Jason hadn't ignored him. He simply hadn't looked for him first. The following month, Jason received an academic award at school. Henry arrived early. He found a seat beside Lauren. They greeted each other politely. The ceremony began. Jason walked across the stage to receive his certificate. The audience applauded. Henry stood proudly. When the ceremony ended, families gathered in the hallway. Jason walked toward Lauren with a wide smile. "I got it." Lauren hugged him. "I'm proud of you." Henry stepped forward. "So am I." Jason smiled. "Thanks." They took a picture together. A few minutes later, Jason walked away with Lauren to meet his teacher. Henry remained where he was. He noticed something. Jason naturally shared his happiest moments with Lauren first, not because he loved his father less, because Lauren had shared every step that led to those moments. A few weeks later, Jason celebrated another birthday. Lauren organized a simple party at a neighborhood park. Family members gathered around picnic tables. Children played baseball and laughed together. Henry arrived carrying a neatly wrapped gift. "Happy birthday, buddy." Jason hugged him. "Thanks, Dad." Henry handed him the box. Jason opened it. Inside was a professional baseball glove. "It's really nice." "I'm glad you like it." Jason smiled. "I do." He set the glove beside the other presents. Then he ran back to his friends. Henry watched him join another baseball game. Lauren walked over. "Thank you for coming." "I wouldn't miss his birthday." Lauren nodded. "I'm glad." Henry looked across the field. "He seems happy." "He is. He doesn't need much." Lauren smiled. "He never did." Henry understood exactly what she meant. Later that afternoon, everyone gathered for birthday cake. Jason stood in the middle while everyone sang. Before blowing out the candles, he looked around the group. His eyes found Lauren immediately. She smiled. He smiled back. Henry noticed the exchange. It wasn't dramatic. It was natural. Jason instinctively looked for the person who had always been there. That evening, Henry drove home alone. The birthday gift still wasn't the memory Jason talked about. Instead, Jason kept laughing about the baseball game with his friends and the cake Lauren had baked herself. Henry finally understood another lesson. Children don't remember childhood one expensive gift at a time. They remember the people who shared ordinary days with them. The following weekend, Henry opened an old photo album. He slowly turned each page. There was Jason learning to ride a bicycle. Jason holding his first baseball glove. Jason wearing a Halloween costume. Jason opening Christmas presents. Henry appeared in some of the pictures. Lauren appeared in almost all of them. He closed the album and leaned back in his chair. He wasn't looking at photographs anymore. He was looking at years he could never live again. For the first time, Henry stopped measuring his life by promotions, property, or bank accounts. He began measuring it by birthdays, school programs, baseball games, family dinners, and all the ordinary moments he had believed could always wait. Now, they were gone, and he was watching many of Jason's happiest memories from the outside, instead of living them beside his son. A few weeks after Jason's birthday, Henry arrived early to pick him up for the weekend. Lauren opened the front door. "Come in. Jason's almost ready." Henry stepped inside. The small rental house felt warm. Dinner was cooking. School papers covered part of the dining table. Jason's baseball glove rested beside the door. It wasn't a large house. It felt lived in. Jason hurried downstairs with his overnight bag. "Hi, Dad. Ready?" Jason nodded. Before leaving, Lauren handed Jason a water bottle. "Don't forget your baseball tournament next Saturday." Jason smiled. "I won't." Henry looked at him. "I'll be there." Jason answered kindly. "Okay." The reply surprised Henry. There was no excitement, no smile that said he was counting on it, only a polite answer. On the drive home, Henry asked, "You're not excited about the tournament?" Jason looked out the window. "I am. I said I'd be there." "I know." Henry glanced at him. "You don't believe me?" Jason looked back. "I'll be happy if you come." Henry felt those words land heavily. "What do you mean?" Jason answered with complete honesty. "I stopped expecting it." Henry tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "You think I'd miss it?" Jason shrugged. "You used to." The car became quiet. Jason hadn't spoken with anger. He had simply told the truth. That truth stayed with Henry all weekend. The following Saturday, Henry arrived at the baseball field 30 minutes early. Jason noticed him while warming up. A small smile appeared. "You came," Henry nodded. "I told you I would." Jason smiled again before joining his teammates. Henry watched every inning. He cheered every play. When the game ended, Coach Marcus walked over. "You made it." Henry smiled. "I wasn't going to miss this one." Coach Marcus looked at him. "I'm glad." Henry sensed there was more to say. Coach Marcus continued, "Jason's a good kid." "I know. He worked hard to get here." Henry nodded proudly. Coach Marcus folded his arms. "Lauren never missed a practice." Henry looked toward the field. "I know." There were plenty of evenings. Jason looked toward the parking lot, hoping you'd arrive. Henry lowered his eyes. Coach Marcus spoke gently. He eventually stopped looking. Those words hurt more than any criticism. Henry thanked him and walked toward the parking lot. He didn't try to defend himself. There was nothing to defend. A few days later, Henry visited Cynthia. She welcomed him inside. They sat at the kitchen table. She poured 2 cups of coffee. "I've been worried about you." Henry nodded. "I know." Cynthia looked directly at him. "Do you finally understand what happened?" "I think I'm starting to." She spoke quietly. "You kept chasing the next promotion. I thought I was building a better life." "You were." She shook her head. "You just forgot who you were building it for." Henry stared into his coffee. "I can't change those years." "No, you can change the years ahead." Henry nodded slowly. "I hope Jason gives me that chance." Cynthia smiled. "That depends on what you do." Later that week, Henry drove past the neighborhood where he used to live. He noticed Harold working in his front yard. Henry parked and walked over. "Good afternoon." Harold smiled. "Good to see you." They talked for several minutes. Finally, Harold asked, "How's Jason?" "He's doing well." "That's good." Harold leaned on his shovel. "I used to watch you leave for work every morning." Henry nodded. "I remember. I also watched Lauren throwing baseballs in the backyard almost every evening." Henry looked down. Harold continued. "Jason never cared who had the biggest paycheck." He smiled kindly. He just wanted both parents cheering for him. Henry swallowed hard. "I know that now." Harold placed a hand on his shoulder. "Knowing is the easy part." Henry looked up. "The hard part is showing up." Henry drove home, thinking about those words. Jason, Coach Marcus, Cynthia, Harold. None of them had talked about money. None of them mentioned the house. None of them cared about the settlement. Every conversation pointed to the same truth. Jason had never needed a wealthier father. He had needed a present one. That evening, Henry stood in the living room, looking at the family photographs still hanging on the wall. He no longer saw the vacations or the house behind them. He saw birthdays, baseball games, school mornings, family dinners. Those were the moments that had shaped Jason's childhood. Those were the moments he had traded for meetings that no longer mattered. For the first time since the divorce, Henry stopped looking for someone else to blame. He accepted that the distance between him and his son had been built one missed day at a time. If he wanted to become Jason's father again in more than name, he would have to earn that place through the same thing he had failed to give for years: his time. The morning after visiting Cynthia, Harold, and Coach Marcus, Henry made a decision. He would stop trying to impress Jason. He would start trying to be there for him. The following Wednesday, Henry called Lauren. "Do you have a minute?" "Yes." "I'd like to stop by this evening. Jason has homework, but you can come." "I won't stay long." "That's fine." That evening, Henry arrived carrying nothing in his hands. No shopping bags, no expensive gifts. Lauren noticed immediately. She invited him inside. Jason looked up from the dining table. "Hi, Dad." "Hi, buddy." Henry smiled. "What are you working on?" "A history project." "Can I see it?" Jason handed him the papers. Henry read every page. "This is really good. I worked hard. I can tell." Jason smiled. It was a simple conversation. For Henry, it meant more than any gift he had ever bought. A few minutes later, Jason returned to his homework. Henry looked at Lauren. "Can we talk for a minute?" She nodded and walked into the kitchen with him. Henry took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology." Lauren listened quietly. "I spent years believing my job was enough." She said nothing. "I thought providing money made me a good husband and father." He shook his head. "I was wrong." Lauren looked at him. "I know you were." Henry didn't argue. "I've been thinking about everything. The baseball games, the school events, the birthdays. I kept telling myself I'd make up for them." Lauren answered calmly. "You can't schedule yesterday." Henry lowered his eyes. "I finally understand that." Lauren leaned against the kitchen counter. "Understanding it is important. So is changing." Henry nodded. "I want to." She looked at him with honesty. "Henry, I don't hate you." He looked surprised. "I was hurt." I was disappointed. But hate doesn't help, Jason. Henry listened carefully. Lauren continued. I forgave you a long time ago. His eyes widened. You did? Yes. She spoke gently. Forgiveness helped me move forward. Henry asked quietly, then why does everything still feel so distant? Lauren answered without hesitation, because forgiveness and trust are different. Henry remained silent. She continued, I can forgive someone in one day. They earn trust one day at a time. Henry nodded slowly. That makes sense. You missed a lot of ordinary moments. You can't replace them, but you can stop missing the ones ahead. Henry looked toward the dining room, where Jason was still working. What if he never trusts me again? Lauren smiled softly. Jason has a good heart. He isn't waiting for perfection. He's waiting for consistency. Henry repeated the word to himself. Consistency. Lauren nodded. Show up. Keep your promises. Call when you say you'll call. Be at the games. Be at the school events. Don't make him wonder anymore. Henry felt tears building in his eyes. For years he had searched for complicated answers. Lauren had just given him a simple one. Jason walked into the kitchen. You guys okay? Lauren smiled. We're fine. Henry looked at his son. I've made a lot of mistakes. Jason nodded. I know. I'm going to do better. Jason studied his father's face. Okay. That single word carried hope, not certainty. Hope. Henry smiled. I'll see you at practice on Friday. Jason answered immediately. I'll look for you. Henry understood the difference. Months earlier, Jason had stopped expecting him. Now his son was willing to look again. Henry left the house feeling lighter than he had in years. He didn't feel lighter because anyone had forgotten the past. He felt lighter because he finally knew what he needed to do. The next morning, Henry walked into his office. He looked at his calendar. Several evening meetings filled the schedule. He canceled the first one, then another, then a third. His assistant looked surprised. Everything all right? Henry smiled. Everything's finally becoming important. That Friday afternoon, he arrived at the baseball field before Jason. He sat quietly in the bleachers. When Jason stepped onto the field and saw his father waiting, a small smile appeared on his face. Henry smiled back. He knew one afternoon wouldn't repair years of absence. One apology wouldn't erase countless missed moments. One promise wouldn't rebuild trust. That would take time. For the first time in many years, Henry stopped chasing promotions, possessions, and victories that looked impressive on paper. He chose something far more valuable. He decided to earn back his place in his son's life, one ordinary day at a time. Monday morning looked different for Henry. He walked into his office carrying a new mindset. For years, every promotion had been his first priority. Now, Jason came first. His assistant entered with his schedule. You have a 3-day business trip next week. Henry looked at the calendar. When does Jason's school program start? Thursday evening. Henry closed the folder. Cancel the trip. She looked surprised. The client requested you personally. They'll meet with someone else. She nodded. I'll make the changes. It was the first time Henry had turned down an opportunity that could have helped his career. He didn't regret it. Thursday arrived. Parents filled the school auditorium. Jason stood backstage with his classmates. He looked through the crowd. His eyes found Lauren first. She smiled and waved. A few seconds later, he noticed Henry walking through the doors. Jason smiled again. This time, both parents were there. After the program ended, Jason ran toward them. You both came. Lauren smiled. We wouldn't miss it. Henry looked at Jason. I won't miss these anymore. Jason nodded. He didn't answer. Henry understood. Promises meant very little. Actions would have to speak for him. The following Saturday, Jason had baseball practice. Henry arrived before anyone else. Coach Marcus looked over. You're early. Henry smiled. I planned to stay that way. Coach Marcus nodded. I think Jason noticed. Henry watched the entire practice. He cheered. He picked up baseballs after drills. He helped carry equipment back to the storage room. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He simply wanted to be present. When practice ended, Jason walked beside him. "Dad, yeah? You really stayed the whole time." Henry smiled. "I told you I would." Jason looked down with a small smile. "I know." On Sunday, Henry called Jason. "Want to have breakfast before I take you home?" "I'd like that." They stopped at a small diner. No expensive restaurant. No surprises. Just pancakes, eggs, and conversation. Henry listened more than he talked. Jason spoke about school, his baseball team, his favorite subjects. Henry realized how much he had missed. Not because Jason had hidden anything, because he had never slowed down enough to listen. When breakfast ended, Jason smiled. "Can we do this again?" Henry smiled back. "Every weekend if you want." "I do." Across town, Lauren noticed changes too. Jason came home smiling. "How was your weekend?" "It was good." "What did you guys do?" "We had breakfast." Lauren waited. Jason continued. "We talked." She smiled. "That's nice." "He came to practice." "I'm glad." "He didn't leave early." Lauren looked at her son. That simple sentence meant more than anything else. Over the next several months, Henry kept showing up. He attended school programs. He watched baseball games. He called when he promised. If work created a conflict, he moved work instead of moving Jason. People at the office noticed. Curtis walked into Henry's office one afternoon. "You've been turning down a lot of travel." Henry nodded. "I have." "That's not like you." "It is now." Curtis laughed. "I thought you wanted to keep climbing." Henry smiled. "I already climbed high enough." Curtis looked confused. Henry continued. "I spent years chasing promotions. And I almost lost the relationship that mattered most." Curtis had no answer. That evening, Henry picked Jason up for dinner. As they walked into the restaurant, Jason reached over and held the door open. Henry smiled. "Thanks." Jason shrugged. "No problem." It was a small gesture. Henry appreciated it. Respect had not disappeared. It had simply been buried beneath years of disappointment. Now it was slowly returning. When dinner ended, they walked to the parking lot together. Jason looked up at his father. "You've been coming to everything." Henry smiled. "I plan to keep doing that." Jason nodded. "I believe you." Those 3 words meant more to Henry than every promotion he had ever received. Trust wasn't returning because of money. It wasn't returning because of gifts. It was returning because Jason no longer wondered if his father would appear. He knew. For the first time in many years, Henry stopped measuring success by the title on his office door. He measured it by something much more valuable. When Jason looked into the crowd, he no longer wondered whether his father would be there. He expected to see him, and Henry intended to make sure he never had to wonder again. Summer arrived, and Henry kept every promise he made. He didn't announce that he had changed. He proved it. Every Friday, he picked Jason up on time. Every baseball game, he was already in the stands before the first pitch. Every school event, Jason found both parents waiting for him. Weeks turned into months. Jason noticed. One Saturday morning, Henry pulled into Lauren's driveway. Jason walked outside carrying his baseball bag. He climbed into the truck and smiled. "You're early." Henry laughed. "I figured I'd beat you this time." Jason smiled. "You did." They drove to practice. For the first time in years, the ride felt easy. They talked about baseball. They talked about school. They even joked about Henry trying to cook breakfast the week before. Jason laughed. "I still can't believe you burned the pancakes." Henry laughed too. "I never said I was a great cook." "You definitely aren't." Both of them laughed all the way to the field. Coach Marcus watched them step out of the truck together. He smiled. "You two seem different." Henry nodded. "We're getting there." Coach Marcus looked toward Jason. "Keep doing what you're doing." "I plan to." After practice, Jason picked up his glove. "Dad." "Yeah?" "You want to throw the ball around for a while?" Henry smiled. "I'd love that." They stayed nearly another hour. No audience, no celebration, just a father and son throwing a baseball across an empty field. Henry realized those simple moments had become the most valuable part of his week. Later that afternoon, Jason returned to Lauren's house. "How was practice?" she asked. "It was great. You stayed late. Dad and I played catch." Lauren smiled. "That's nice." Jason nodded. "We do that almost every week now." Lauren noticed something else. Jason no longer sounded surprised when he talked about his father. Dependability had become normal. One evening, Lauren received a phone call from Henry. "I wanted to let you know." "About what?" "My company offered another promotion." "Congratulations." "I turned it down." Lauren was quiet for a moment. "Was that difficult?" "A year ago, it would have been." "And now?" Henry smiled. "It would have meant more travel." "I already know what that costs." Lauren understood immediately. "I'm proud of you." "Thank you." "I wasn't looking for praise." "I know." "You were letting me know Jason comes first." "Exactly." After they ended the call, Lauren smiled to herself. She wasn't thinking about the marriage anymore. That chapter had ended. She was thinking about Jason. He finally had the father he had wanted for years. As autumn arrived, Jason's school held another family heritage night. This time, Jason didn't spend the evening looking toward the doors. He already knew both parents would come. Henry arrived early. Lauren was already there. Jason spotted them from across the room. He smiled and waved. "There you are." Henry laughed. "We wouldn't miss it." Jason introduced both parents to his teacher. "This is my mom." "And this is my dad." The pride in his voice made Henry's heart swell. When the program ended, families gathered for refreshments. Lauren looked at Henry. "You've kept your word." "I'm going to keep doing it." She nodded. "I know." Those words meant a great deal. Trust had not returned because anyone forgot the past. It returned because Henry gave everyone a reason to believe him again. Months later, Henry and Jason sat together in the backyard after another baseball game. The sun was beginning to set. Jason tossed the baseball into his glove. "Dad?" "Yes?" "I'm glad you come now." Henry looked at him. "I'm glad too." Jason smiled. "I don't worry anymore." Henry understood exactly what he meant. There had been a time when Jason hoped his father would appear. Now he expected him. That change wasn't built by one apology. It wasn't built by one conversation. It came from hundreds of small choices made over many months. Henry finally understood something Lauren had known from the beginning. Children build trust one ordinary day at a time, the same way they lose it. Looking across the yard at his son, Henry knew he could never recover the years he had missed. But he also knew something else. He would never willingly miss another one. 5 years passed. Jason was no longer the little boy who waited by the front window, hoping his father would come home. He had grown into a confident young teenager. Henry had kept his promise. He attended games, school programs, parent meetings, weekend breakfasts. Whenever Jason looked into the crowd, his father was there. One Saturday afternoon, Jason packed his baseball equipment after another game. He walked toward both parents. "You both saw the home run?" Lauren laughed. "We sure did." Henry smiled. "You crushed that ball." Jason grinned. "I've been practicing." Henry smiled. "I can tell." They stood together talking for several minutes before Jason joined his teammates. Lauren looked at Henry. "You've done well." Henry nodded. "I've tried." "You did more than try." She smiled. "You stayed." Henry looked across the field. "I wish I had learned that lesson sooner." Lauren answered honestly, "So do I." There was no anger in her voice, only truth. That evening, Henry drove back to the large house he had fought so hard to keep. He unlocked the front door. The house was quiet. Years earlier, he believed owning it meant he had won. Now every room reminded him of something different. The kitchen reminded him of breakfasts he had missed. The backyard reminded him of baseball games Lauren had played instead of him. The staircase reminded him of evenings he came home after Jason was already asleep. He walked into Jason's old bedroom. The room had barely changed. A baseball sat on the shelf. A few childhood photographs remained in a frame. Henry picked up one picture. Jason couldn't have been older than 6. He was sitting on Henry's shoulders during a neighborhood picnic. Both of them were laughing. Henry smiled, then his smile slowly faded. He finally understood what that photograph represented. It wasn't a special vacation. It wasn't an expensive gift. It was an ordinary afternoon. Those ordinary afternoons had been the greatest treasure of all. He sat on the edge of the bed. His eyes moved across the room. He still owned the house. He still owned the cabin. His investment accounts had grown. His retirement savings were larger than ever. Years earlier, those things had felt like victory. Now they simply felt like possessions. His greatest success was no longer measured by anything he owned. It was measured by every phone call Jason answered, every conversation they shared, every game they watched together, every promise Henry kept. He smiled as he looked at the photograph again. Their relationship had healed. Trust had returned. But one truth never changed. The years he had missed would never come back. No judge could return them. No promotion could replace them. No amount of money could purchase another chance to watch his little boy grow up. Those moments belonged to yesterday. They would stay there forever. Henry carefully placed the photograph back on the shelf. Before turning off the light, he looked around the room one last time. Years earlier, he walked into this house believing he had won everything. Now he knew the truth. The greatest loss had never been his marriage. It had been the ordinary years of Jason's childhood that slipped away while he was busy chasing a future he thought mattered more. He locked the front door and walked toward his car. For the first time in many years, he wasn't thinking about work. He wasn't thinking about money. He was thinking about the baseball game he planned to attend with Jason the following weekend. That was where he wanted to be. That was where his life truly mattered. Some victories fill a bank account. Others fill a heart. Henry spent years chasing the first one before discovering that the second was worth far more. Thank you for spending this time with us on Will and Rye's Stories. If this story reminded you that the people we love are always more valuable than the things we own, please support the channel by liking this video, sharing it with someone you care about, and subscribing for more meaningful stories. Because in the end, Henry received everything he demanded in court. The house, the cabin, the investments, the retirement accounts. But the one thing no legal victory could ever return was the daily privilege of watching his son grow up. That was the real loss, and it was the only one that truly mattered.